They smiled at me and raised their glasses. "Thanks for the wedding present," my sister said with a wink. Everyone laughed. My parents beamed like they'd just hosted royalty. But what they didn't say, what they didn't think I knew, was that they had sold the only thing my grandfather ever left me. The restaurant. It wasn't just a building on a busy corner in the city hub. It was Whitaker's Table, the place where I learned how to wash dishes before I could reach the sink, where I built my first blueprint on a napkin at age 10, and where I fell in love with architecture. It was the heart of who I am. They sold it to fund my sister Heather's wedding. $150,000 blown on champagne fountains, a French designer gown, a cathedral orchestra, and drones to capture every second. And I was supposed to sit there and smile, gracious, quiet Claire. The good daughter. The overlooked one. Again. But what they didn't know is that I had already seen the forged documents. I had already spoken to the buyers. I had a lawyer. And while they raised glasses to toast my so-called gift, I had already filed the paperwork that would unravel every lie they'd told. I just smiled. I waited. Then I said, "You should check your mail." Because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens when the quiet one stops being polite. It's about how I took back what was mine legally, financially, emotionally. So if you think you know how this ends, stay with me. You don't. My name is Claire Emerson. I'm 36, an architect in Boston. I live alone, not because I have to, but because solitude has always been my sanctuary. Peace to me has never been quietness, it's been clarity. It's knowing where I stand and with whom. But there's something you should know. Before I could design buildings, before I knew the weight of betrayal, before I learned how to speak up for myself, I learned how to carry a tray at my grandfather's restaurant. Whitaker's Table. The name alone still makes something inside me settle. It was more than a restaurant, it was a rhythm. A heartbeat. The smell of thyme and roasted garlic, the clang of cast iron, the sound of my grandfather Jack humming old jazz while chopping carrots with terrifying precision. It was where I went after school and every summer from the time I was 8 years old. While Heather went to dance camp and sleepovers and spa weekends, I was elbow deep in soap suds or curled up in the back office sketching buildings on receipt paper. Jack Whitaker was the kind of man who didn't say much, but when he did, it mattered. He saw me in ways my parents never could. I wasn't the pretty one, the social one, the easy one. I was the careful one. The builder. The watcher. The girl who noticed chipped tiles and wanted to fix them. He encouraged that. He fed that curiosity. He was the first person who ever asked me what I wanted to be, not what I should be, not what would make my parents proud, but what made me come alive. I told him I wanted to design places that felt like home, even for people who'd never had one. He nodded like it made perfect sense. "You will," he said, "because you already know how to make people feel welcome." When I got my first job at an architecture firm, he wrote me a letter, 3 full pages. He called me stronger than the world knows and sharper than you'll let on. I still keep it in my drawer. The year he died, I barely spoke at the funeral. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I knew I'd shatter. He was my safe place in a world that constantly asked me to shrink. I didn't expect anything when the will was read. Maybe a set of tools, maybe nothing at all. But then the lawyer looked up and said my name. To my granddaughter Claire Emerson, he read, who sees structure where others see chaos, and who knows that some places aren't meant to be sold or split or modernized. I leave you Whitaker's Table in full. I couldn't breathe. My parents didn't say much. My mother made one of those polite comments with a blade tucked inside. Well, of course, she always was his favorite. My father looked annoyed but resigned. Heather rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath. I was too overwhelmed to care. I didn't inherit a building that day. I inherited my history. I inherited every Saturday morning cleanup shift, every handwritten recipe card, every corner booth where I'd done my homework while the world bustled around me. I inherited the part of me that had always belonged to that place. And for a few years, everything was fine. I kept the restaurant closed, not because I didn't care, but because I was waiting. Waiting for the right time, the right plan, the right breath to rebuild it into something that honored Jack, not just in name, but in spirit. But I should have known. In my family, anything that doesn't shine in a photo or pad a resume is invisible. And to them, I'd inherited nothing more than a wasted space in a prime location. I should have known they wouldn't let it be. I should have known what they'd do. But I didn't. Not yet. It started with a phone call that should have meant nothing. I was in the middle of a site visit in Beacon Hill, standing in a half-demolished entryway, trying to explain to a contractor why historic preservation didn't mean do whatever you want. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. Later that night, I listened to the voicemail. The voice was soft, familiar in the way a neighbor's voice becomes after decades of waving from porches. Claire, dear, it's Dorothy Myers. I just wanted to say how lovely the young couple seems. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye before you sold the restaurant, but I hope you're doing well. I froze. Sold the restaurant? I hadn't sold anything. I hadn't even listed it. I replayed the message twice, then called her back. Dorothy answered on the second ring. Oh, sweetheart, I'm sorry if I spoke out of turn. I assumed it was your decision. The for sale sign was up for 2 weeks, and then, poof, it was gone. Young couple moved in, big smiles, said they were excited to carry on the legacy. I thought maybe you just didn't want to talk about it. My stomach turned. Dorothy, I never put it up for sale. A long pause. Oh, she said, quiet and hesitant. Then I think you should come see it for yourself. The next morning, I skipped my meetings and drove across the city. Whitaker's table looked the same from a distance, but as I got closer, I saw the changes. The wood trim had been painted. The window boxes were gone. A new lock glinted on the front door. And hanging over the side entrance, like some kind of punchline, was a banner, grand opening soon, the table by Morgan Events. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough that a man came out with a clipboard and smiled like I was just another curious neighbor. You hear about the catering jobs? He asked. No, I said. I'm Claire Emerson. This was my grandfather's restaurant. His smile faded. Oh, you're her. Her? He pulled out a folder and flipped through a few pages. Sorry. Everything was handled through the sellers, Robert and Mary and Emerson. They said the estate was theirs to settle. My parents. The weight of that truth hit me like cold air. My parents had sold the restaurant. My restaurant. The one place I'd inherited, the one thing that had ever belonged to me alone. And they'd done it behind my back. Quietly. Carefully. Illegally. When I got home, I tore through every drawer in my apartment until I found the title deed. It was still in my name. No transfer notice. No signatures. But when I checked the county's property database, there it was, updated just 4 weeks ago. New owners. New tax information. New record. With a forged signature. My name. Not my handwriting. I felt the floor shift under me. I wasn't just being shut out of my own legacy, I was being erased from it. I spent that night awake, poring over paperwork, bank statements, anything that might explain how deep the theft went. What I found was worse than I imagined. Money drained from an old joint account I'd forgotten even existed. Charges linked to catering companies, wedding planners, florists, Heather's wedding. They hadn't just sold the restaurant. They used my money to pay for it. That was the night I stopped being quiet. That was the night I called Jessica. Jessica didn't ask questions at first. She heard my voice, tight, flat, barely holding together, and simply said, "Come over. Bring everything." Her office sat above a real estate brokerage, tucked behind a row of brownstones in Cambridge. It smelled like old paper and sharp coffee. I brought a box, documents, screen captures, handwritten notes, everything I'd uncovered. She sat across from me, flipping through pages with that calm, calculating look she always had when something was more serious than she wanted me to know. "It's not just unethical," she said finally. "It's criminal." The words sat heavy between us. "They forged your name on a property deed. That's real estate fraud. And they withdrew funds from an account still legally tied to you. That's financial theft." She didn't sugarcoat it. "That's why I chose her." I nodded. "Can we take it back?" Jessica didn't hesitate. "Yes, but it'll be a fight." That night, we filed a fraud report with the county office. By morning, Jessica had already reached out to the notary whose stamp was on the forged deed. Her name was Pamela Rohr, a notary based in Vermont. She was kind and horrified. "I've never notarized anything for a Claire Emerson," she told us over the phone. "But I did report a stolen notary journal and seal last winter. They were taken from a locked filing cabinet during a community center break-in." Jessica leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temple. "They used a stolen notary identity. That's next level." I stared at the wall, not seeing anything. "They didn't even try to hide it," I said. "They just assumed I'd never check." And maybe they were right. For so long, I'd been the one who let things go. The one who didn't want drama. The one who believed that family, even when selfish, still meant something. But this wasn't selfishness. It was erasure. And they expected me to smile through it. That weekend, Heather posted a photo on Instagram. A filtered shot of the restaurant sign, painted over, renamed, and a caption that made me shake. Grateful for the fresh start this space gave me. It wasn't mine, but my family helped me get here. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones you don't ask for. The comments were full of hearts and congratulations. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was shocked, but because it confirmed everything. She knew. And she didn't care. I took a screenshot and sent it to Jessica. "Me, add this to the file." Her, "Done. You ready to go public?" I thought about that. About what it would mean. What it would destroy. And then I thought about Jack. About the nights we stood in the back of the restaurant, wiping down tables in silence. About how he taught me that places remember who love them. That legacy isn't something you're given, it's something you protect. "Yes," I texted back. "Let's begin." I didn't want revenge. Not really. What I wanted was acknowledgement. The truth spoken out loud, in a room where no one could pretend they didn't hear it. I wanted my name back. My voice back. The legacy Jack gave me back where it belonged. And now I had it. The court ruling came quietly. A simple stamp, a signature, a nod from the judge. The restaurant was mine again. The forged documents had been voided. The accounts closed. Restitution ordered. Heather's wedding, dazzling as it was, had been built on lies, and those lies crumbled fast. Tyler left her. The money dried up. And my parents? They didn't go to jail, but they lost something deeper. Their reputations. Their peace. Their daughter. I hadn't spoken to them since the hearing. And I didn't plan to. Because the truth is, there are some things you can forgive and some things you outgrow. I reopened Whitaker's table in the spring. No fanfare, no influencers. Just a clean sign, polished floors, and the same honey-thyme chicken that Jack used to make on Saturdays after fishing. Locals came. Old friends. New faces. People who'd heard whispers of the story and wanted to sit in a place built not just with wood and nails, but memory. Some nights I'd stand behind the bar, just watching. Listening to laughter. Seeing the soft light bounce off the walls Jack painted himself. And I'd think, this is what healing sounds like. A few weeks later, I got a letter. Heather's handwriting. Inside was a photo of her newborn daughter, Leia. And a single line. "She'll grow up knowing the truth. I won't rewrite it." I didn't frame it. I didn't write back. But I kept the photo. Because even if we were finished, maybe she wasn't. And that mattered. People ask me sometimes why I fought so hard for a building. Why I risked so much to take it back. And I tell them the truth. It was never just a building. It was the one place in the world I knew I mattered. And now every time I unlock the door, every time someone walks in and says, "Feels like home in here," I know I did the right thing. Not just for Jack. Not even for the past. But for the girl I used to be, the one no one fought for. This time, I fought for her. And I won.